Okay, hello and welcome to everyone who is watching live and everyone who is watching the recording. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live series, Job Search Magic, where we are bringing the wisdom, the resources, and the secret intel you need to land your dream job in your dream salary. I'm Shannon Bowen, the CEO of Monsoon Leadership. I am a career advancement coach, a job search expert, and a salary whisperer. And I am so excited to have Donita here, who is my good friend and is also a fiery DEI expert. And we are going to talk about the hidden costs of being undervalued. And what I love about Donita is that she brings knowledge management and conversational leadership tools and methodologies to ensure that access and information, and as a result, power, right? We're going to talk about power today, are distributed equitably. And she will never stop fighting for equity in organizations and justice. And that is why I am so excited to have you here. Welcome, Donita.
Oh, thank you. I am thrilled to be here. Number one, because if y'all don't already know, anytime you get an opportunity to speak with Shannon, it is a gold mine. Secondly, the state of the world where we're having an historic moment every other day. It's
It's so hard to keep up.
it's hard to keep up. And I know that I've been questioning, do I think about salary while the world might be like burning down, or what do I do? And I think the answer for me anyway is both and. Like,
Yes,
why
always.
not both? And also, I sometimes struggle with the term DEI. I like racial equity, racial liberation,
Oh,
but
I
I,
like
I,
racial liberation. That one's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. People are finicky, and DEI is even an issue now. And so I wanted to be deliberate about using terminology that, because I think people have an issue with understanding what diversity actually means. It does not
Yeah.
mean black and white.
Yeah.
It means age. It means gender orientation. It means whether you're an extrovert preference or an introvert preference.
Yes.
How much damage have extroverts done to the world? How much damage have
I feel like we
introverts
learned
done
that
to
in
the
the
world?
pandemic. The rise of the introvert really came up in the pandemic. And it's,
And
yes, the power of the introvert. I totally agree.
yeah. So I'm just excited to talk a little bit about some of the things that I've observed and learned myself so that people can learn from my, not errors, but maybe your journey can be a few months instead of a few years.
I wanted to start with a concept that you brought to me that I just love. Tell us about your personal advisory board and how that helps you along in your career moves and job searches.
So my personal advisory board is people who've known me and known my core from the very beginning. When I was singing full time, I had a vocal coach, Dan Smith. I love you, Dan. And I knew that he fundamentally adored the way that I
Mm.
sang. And so when Dan said, "Oh, I think you can do better," I didn't immediately spiral into, I'm like the worst singer in the world. I was like, oh, okay, this man who really loves the way I sing is saying you can do better. And so the personal advisory board is that the people who fundamentally understand who you are and are your biggest fans and can, like, they can cheerlead for you, they can advocate for you, but they're also the people that you go to when you're like, this thing happened. Am I
Sounds
allowed
off
to
here. Yeah.
am I allowed to be mad about this? Can I be
Yes.
salty about this, or do I just need to let this go? And it's a relationship of trust, because when your team tells you let it go, you have to let it go. Even though you want to like be like, no, but it's unfair. I don't like this. They are the people who can give you perspective when perspective is hard to come by.
I love that. And we talked about this over breakfast in Seattle, this idea of being undervalued and underpaid in multiple jobs and how that takes a toll. And what I love about the personal advisory board is that is where you hold your value sacred because it doesn't always happen at work. But you can
Yeah.
go to your personal advisory board and say, hey, I think something's off here. And they're like, yep, it's time to change jobs. You're worth more. This is how you advocate for yourself. Or even if you have to do a lawsuit, whatever it is that's going on at work, you have your personal advisory board. So I wanted to start there because I think that it's a very lonely experience in a job search. So
Yeah.
I want to encourage everyone to build your personal advisory board. A quote you often say is, before the truth can set you free, you need to know what lie is holding you back. So, for job seekers or people who are seeking promotions, what are those lies that are holding them back?
First, that one is I stole that from somebody, but I loved it. It's an homage
It's
rather
a
than stealing.
homage.
Yep. Okay, so to me, there are two different kinds of lies: the lies that the system tells you, and the lies that you tell yourself.
Yes, yes, very true.
So the lies that the system tells you are this is a meritocracy
Mhm.
and everybody is starting from an equal place and will have equal access to opportunity. That is a lie. Not
Yeah.
everybody's going to have that. Not everybody has people who can recommend them, or a trust fund, or
Yeah.
people who they can rely on as they're job searching. And it's been 6 months and you're depleted your savings, but you still need a little time to find that job that's going to fulfill you, that's going to value you.
Yes.
Some of the lies that we tell ourselves are somebody else is going to advocate for me. I am not worth the effort
Mhm.
of finding someplace that's going to treat me well. One of the things for marginalized communities, especially people of color, is that for me, my parents instilled a really good self worth into who I am. I've never questioned who I am. And I feel really privileged to say that. I did question, though, because of some of the lies that I had started to believe, I did question whether anybody else would ever see my value.
Mhm. Yes.
And that's where your personal advisory board can come in. It's so hard to be the only person who's like, no, really, you have something amazing to offer the world. It's hard to have that just be you. And without my personal advisory board, without some external groups that like they valued what I had to say, and I would have this moment of disassociation
Yeah.
almost between coming into a workplace that thought of me as invisible, sometimes thought of me as a squeaky wheel, didn't value how I thought of things, to these people who actively sought me out. They pulled me up into the yes, you've got great self worth, but there are other people, other organizations, other networks that are going to value you in the way you need to be valued. So those are a few of the lies.
I love that. And something I say to my clients is, we're going to find a job that deserves you,
Mm,
not a job you deserve, a job that deserves you and the talents that you bring. I also want to bring up something that you did during the pandemic, not in the most exciting job ever. And you started your thought leadership and you started posting on LinkedIn, writing LinkedIn articles. You were leading conversational leadership. And I think that's so important is like when your job is not super fulfilling you, you have to find a way to put yourself out there and attract what you're looking for to you. And that really helped you in your next job search, but also built this whole thought leadership around you. And now you're speaking and you're doing all these wonderful things. And I just think it's so great that it was like, you know what? It's not just this job. I can bring my talents in other ways and foster community in other ways. And I just really admired that you did that during a tough time when we're all just stuck at home. Does anybody hear me?
yeah, yeah. I trained as an opera singer and made my living as an opera singer for a while, and then of course the arts imploded.
Mhm.
But there was a creativity
Yeah.
in singing that, especially during the pandemic proper, people weren't hiring, people weren't being able to sing, and like the creativity had to come out somewhere. And I love writing, but to sit down and write. At some point, there's just something that wants to erupt. And then I'm like, here's my latest TED rant. I I'm just gonna here are some of my thoughts. And I just put it on LinkedIn because I don't use LinkedIn like I didn't use it at the time as a networking tool because I'm scared of privacy. I'm scared of all of the things. But I was like, oh, let me just put my stuff up on LinkedIn because people will know exactly who I am. And if
Yeah.
anybody ever wants to see me, then here you go.
I
Yeah.
loved it.
So,
It was such a gift. And
hmm,
that's always what I explain to people is when you want to start building your thought leadership to propel you into that next ambitious job, it's not icky. You're actually giving a gift that someone else needs to hear. And I learned so much from your LinkedIn pieces. So I just appreciate it.
hey,
Okay, but now I want to go into a spicy question.
okay.
Let's talk about all these loaded terms. and how they come together: cultural fit,
Oh,
imposter syndrome, and
mm,
stick with the devil you know. How do these concepts interplay to hold people back from career advancement? Talk about the system and how we internalize it.
yeah. Okay, so there's an article by Peggy McIntosh called "Feeling Like a Fraud,"
Mm,
and I think it's from like the 70s even. And that turned my world upside down because her theory is that we are not the imposters, the system is the
mm,
imposter. And that this imposter, anything that we achieve in this system that we recognize as inherently inequitable, inherently trying to oppress us, when we achieve something in it, it feels weird,
yeah.
right? The only way to advance is to play within the system for the most part, but I don't like the system.
Mhm.
And the system has been like oppressing me, oppressing my other folks. What happens when I get into a position that the system has awarded me?
Mm,
So that's imposter syndrome for you. It's hard for anybody to find a job. The cultural fit part, though, is when we're talking about marginalized communities, specifically people of color and Black people in the United States, especially.
mm,
I think that there are a lot of people who know about the study where a resume was prepared and it was exactly the same except for a white sounding name. Caden, I believe, is one of them, and a black sounding name, which was Lamar. And they sent out these resumes, and the white sounding name got called back 1.5 times more than the black sounding name. So that in itself is just like horrific.
yep.
Just because of your name, you're already set back. That 1.5 callbacks equates to 7 years on your resume.
7 years of income growth.
7 years of income growth.
When we started
When
talking about to accept a job that is lower than the salary you want, you're actually setting yourself up to be behind your pay scale for so long. And I think that example is just perfect of how racism plays in that.
yeah, yeah. And so a lot of us don't say the quiet part out loud. Some do, but cultural fit is a dog whistle
Yes, it is.
because it means, oh, this person is absolutely qualified. And yet the number of friends that I've had wondering whether they should wear their natural hair
Mm,
to a job interview is profound because if you have your natural hair out, people are going to be like, not quite sure if the cultural fit. Does she blend into our homogeneity? And that is code for we need people who look and think and sound like us,
yep.
which has been proven to be detrimental to an organization.
Yes, diversity, it encourages stronger outcomes, more creativity, and the businesses thrive. Nonprofits thrive with diversity. And I totally agree. And my hair doesn't help me write emails. My hair doesn't help me.
My hair
There's
does
6 years.
not help me write emails. I love it.
So they had to come up with this stupid term, cultural fit, instead of because it sounds stupid to be like, you can't do this job because of your hair. That's ridiculous. Yeah. And then the last one, and this is
Oh,
what
yes.
I'm talking about, is stick with the devil you know. That if you're expecting it's going to be terrible everywhere, which I'm going to be honest, I hear of abusive hiring practices every day.
Mhm.
I got a spicy question in my text right before we got on that we're going to get into. We have workplace problems, serious trauma and abuse happening in workplaces. So I understand it's hard to feel hopeful that this new boss is going to be better than the last. This new workplace is going to be better than the last. But let's talk about stick with the devil and how that holds people back.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to do a leadership program called Career Pathways. And I was assigned a coach, an executive coach, which was great. Who knew? If you can afford it, if there's a
Yeah.
way for you to find an executive coach, vet them well. But anyways, I had been looking for a new opportunity for a while. And I remember asking him, am I stalling because I'm scared? Or am I adding strands to my trampoline so that when I can jump, I jump where I need to jump? And he said, I think you are creating those strands. But if we're having the same conversation in 6 months, we're going to question some things.
Mm.
When you have found a way to stay safe-ish in a trauma state, it's really hard to put yourself out there and to think about, oh, maybe I should get out of this situation. But you're like, but where? If and this is the danger of thinking that nobody else is going to see your worth. That is a lie.
It isn't. I want to just underscore that.
Yeah.
That is a lie. Someone will value your worth. I have to have hope that is out there for you in your career journey. I have to.
Absolutely. But doing lateral moves, sometimes for your mental health, you just need to get away from this situation. I don't have any issue with that. But one of the things about like building that trampoline so you can jump higher is that the only way in this system that you're going to be able to change or to work around it is if you get higher in the hierarchy so that you can start to affect policy, start to question some of the things that are inherently inequitable about
Yes.
a system. And it's horrible to think that way. But until this system is truly like untangled and rebuilt, reimagined, dreamed, we have to find ways to work within the system.
I 100% agree. I want to jump into some questions from the audience.
Yes.
And everybody watching live, feel free to drop them in. Shay will send them over to us, but we've got some already here that I want to dig in. I want to start with this one.
Mm.
How can you balance the weight of being the first to break norms of inequity when all eyes are already on you as a marginalized person?
Mhm.
A,
Well,
a meaty
another
one to start.
amazing one. You're not always the first. That's the
Mm,
thing, right? You might be the first in that particular organization or that particular network or that particular group, but there are people who have come before you who have set the path and they're shining a light back for you so that you can find your way in there too. So that's my first piece of advice. Think about all of the people that brought you into where you are now and recognize that they forged things into what we thought were immutable pathways or systems so that you could come in there. Being the first is scary, and it is also an opportunity to observe and eventually start to change, question, celebrate things that are not necessarily always celebrated. Yeah, I would say don't necessarily think of yourself as the first. Think of yourself as a part of something that is much bigger. However, if you are not met with the kind of relationship that you should be met with, you can start looking somewhere else.
absolutely. And you've got your personal advisory board to turn back to. And that's why I just love this concept because people get gaslit at work all the time and they get sold a bill of goods that's rotten. And
Hmm.
to be able to have your trusted people you can go to and say, I don't know. Is this right? And I tell people, you don't have to wait a year to change jobs. If you get there and it's bad right away, then let's start working together and find your next job because life is too short. Life is too short from your mental and emotional health, but also
Hmm.
your financial health. If
Yes.
you stick in a job and you know you're underpaid, you may never be able to catch up. And that's real.
Because Social Security looks at what you have earned
Yeah.
in the course of your life, and they set how much you get after your retirement based on that. If you've been underpaid severely, you've probably skipped medical appointments. You've
Yep.
probably not eaten as healthy food as you needed to. You've probably not had as nice a place to call an oasis.
Yeah.
And so then if you get into a category that actually matches what you're worth, all of a sudden you think, oh, I should be successful now. Here's the thing, for this many years beforehand, you weren't being paid what you're worth.
Yep.
So now everything is trying to catch up. People who have been in the salary bracket for 10 years have better savings, they've got better longevity, they've got
Yep.
more access to all sorts of things that you don't have access to. So start thinking about like that is why you need to make these leaps when you can, because nobody's going to look out for you but yourself and your
Yeah.
personal advisory board.
We are both on it now. No, and also just you deserve nice things. I think there's this, oh, we always have to have these noble reasons for having that they want to go for that salary. And it's, I also feel like you can say, you know what, I want to take that dream vacation while my body can do it. This idea that you have to wait until retirement to do those things, but then your body can't climb that mountain. And you should be able to be in a job where you can take the 2 weeks off guilt free, turn off your email, and be able to do that and have the savings to be able to pay for those things. It doesn't have to be these noble things. I think that especially nonprofits were taught sacrifice. But then I look at the 990s and I see what people are making at the top, and that sacrifice is not for everybody. And that's why I was really inspired to do this work, is because I want to help people get their dream job and dream salary. And that's why I have my dream job coaching model. Time is flying. So I got this juicy question. Okay, I want to dig
Mm-hmm.
in. It's like, how do you watch people be wrong when it has a direct impact on your work? When I got more context on this, there's some gaslighting in here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want to be out of emergency mode, but I'm going to keep being push you into emergency mode. And there's so many layers of power and privilege that are in this. But I think what's embedded in this is like, how do you stand up for how you want to work and the integrity you bring to your job when that is not shared with the people above you?
There are a number of different approaches. I've had friends who just left
Yep.
because,
Yeah,
you know,
that's always an option.
it's
Yeah.
always an option because it there was too much. I feel first and think later. If somebody
Mhm.
says something to me that's, "Rah," I am like a mess. Some of my friends realize the context in which this is, and they're like, "Meh, he's stupid. What else is he going to be able to say?" And they're able to do their work despite that sort of wrongness.
Yeah.
And at a certain level, well, you always have to make sure that your bum is covered, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody's trying to put the failures onto you, that's a different thing.
Yes.
But if you're watching somebody just do not great practices, learn from them, learn what not to do. If it's not affecting you emotionally, stay until you've learned what you needed to and then get out. The
Yeah.
system eventually mostly spits out the people who just don't contribute very much.
Yeah. And it might take a while, but I love what you said is also not caring is a superpower at work because you have only so much energy to care in a day. And sometimes we get really wrapped up in like life or death at work. And it's like, but is it? And maybe I need to protect that for things that are more important or
Yep.
things that are coming that are more important. And if I've depleted my energy on this stuff that doesn't really matter, I'm not ready for those things that do.
And this is also where the race part comes into play as well, because I've heard it described as, have you thought in the last 5 minutes, oh, hey, a meteorite hasn't hit us? Probably not. These little microaggressions that come up, these being said, oh, as far as intellect, she's bottom of the barrel, she's a diversity hire.
Mm,
Those things are all little meteorites that hit us at different stages of our lives and our work lives. So when you're having to deal with that nonsense, the nonsense of somebody doing something just wrong, don't spend your energy there. Spend your
okay.
energy in deflecting those meteorites.
And lean into your personal advisory board to remind you of your worth.
Yes.
We are almost at time. I want to encourage everyone to connect with Donita on LinkedIn and on Instagram, and Shay's going to drop those links in. If you're interested in my dream job coaching package, we're going to drop that link in there to help you every step of the way through your job search. And because we talked about salary so much, I do want to drop the link to the anonymous salary survey I did back in January, where I asked people their title, their pay, and their bonuses. It was very enlightening. We're going to do it again in January, but I want to drop that.
Ooh.
And then we'll see all of you next Friday, August 2nd, for our final LinkedIn Live with recruiter Victoria Silverman on what recruiters are looking for in a top candidate. And Donita, thank you so much. I'm so happy that everyone else gets to hear your fire and your passion and your joy. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. And likewise.